Well, hello again and welcome to our reading of selections from Thucydides, Book 4. And we're up to chapter 36. So you remember that the Greeks and the Spartans are really a sort of standoff because neither side is able to get the upper hand. So epe de aperanton ein, since it was aperanton, well, since there was no end in sight, there was no limit to it, in that peras boundary root here, since there was no limit to it, there was no end in sight, the general of the Messenians, having come to Cleon and Demosthenes, he said that they, that is the Greeks, ponein, were labouring allos in vain. But if they were willing, or they are willing, it's present, so if they were, we'd say if they were willing, dunai, to give to him, so he said if they were willing to give to him a certain part, a certain portion of the archers and of the light armed troops, so he said he would peri eonai, he would go around katanotu at the back for them, that's the Spartans, so would go around to the Spartan rear, hodo on a path, hey, whichever he himself might find, so whatever path he might be able to find. Now again after Fa, and he said that, dokein, he expected that he would force an approach, an ephodon. And having taken that which he had asked for, having set out from an unseen place, so out of sight of the enemy, so that they, Ecanus, the Spartans, may Idain, did not see him. Get this funny expression here, katato ie per aken. So it's something like as the ground permitted, so according to that which continually yielded, so as the ground yielded before him, so in other words, as the ground permitted, he went, so going around the precipitous part of the island, so advancing along the precipitous part of the island, and the place where the Spartans, uk ephulason, were not keeping guard, trusting in the strength of the location or position, with hardship and with difficulty, peri-elthone going around, he escaped notice. And suddenly Anaphanes, having appeared on the high ground at the back of them, that is the Spartans. Now we get a tous men, and there's a tous de on the next page, so this tous men is referring to the Spartans. So he terrified them, the Spartans, by the unexpectedness of the approach, so by the unexpected event. And now here's the tous de, but the main verb here is eperose, which is from epironumi, not a terribly overly common verb. It means to strengthen, to give strength to give confidence to. So, and that the object of that is the tous de. This is the Athenians. So for the Spartans, they were shocked by the unexpectedness of what happened, but he gave strength to the Atus, the Athenians, when they saw that. So he gave strength to them, polo malon, very much more. So he increased their confidence greatly. Idontes, when they saw tauta, you have to supply tauta here, those things which they were hoping for, they were expecting perhaps, which they'd been hoping for. And the Spartans, being attacked from both sides now, and we get a te and chi, and being in the same disastrous position, desperate situation, sum pitomati, and we get this parenthetical bit here, thus to compare small with great. So they're comparing the situation to what happened in Thermopylae, and in opposition to the sum pitomati, we get the to in Thermopylae. So, being in the same disastrous situation as they were in Thermopylae, thus to compare small with great, for those ones, that is the Spartans at Thermopylae, diaphthareson, they perished, genitive absolute, when the Persians went around on the mountain path, the Atropos. And they, this is the Spartans now, so the Spartans being now amphiboloi, attacked from both sides, no longer resisted. But a small group fighting with many, and by the weakness of their bodies, on account of the lack of food, they began, it's imperfect, though, they began to give ground. They began to retreat, began to give ground, probably is better there. And the Athenians began to take control, again imperfect, now began to take control of the approaches. Now chapter 37 is short, so I'll continue on with that one. And Cleone and Demosthenes, having realized that if they gave ground, now we get this hoposonoon, which is a tricky expression here. It's even to as greater an extent as, and with the Marlon probably best translated, even the slightest bit further. So they realized that if they gave ground even to the slightest bit further, that they, the Spartans, being destroyed by their army, that is by the Greek army, but by the Athenian army, they would put an end to the battle. And at Aperixen, they perhaps reined in those of themselves, their own troops. So they reined in their own troops, wishing to take them, that is the Spartans, alive to Athens. Apos, if perchance, hearing the kerugmatos, hearing their proclamation, epiklasthein, this is an aorist passive optative here, from epiklao to, it's to break. So being broken in their resolve, and then in brackets, so if they heard, they would be broken in their resolve. It's almost so as to, and this is in square brackets here because the grammar's a bit odd, and the variant readings, so as to hand over their weapons, and that they might literally be defeated by the present Danu terrible situation. So they would hand over their weapons, and they would yield to perhaps their current, so in the face of their current danger, to paraphrase that a little bit. They sent a herald, or they heralded that if they, this is the Spartans, wished to hand over their weapons and themselves to the Athenians, so that Beleuci they might take counsel as to whatsoever thing. Now the next page is Doc K up here. Might seem good. So go back to this, so that they might make deliberations as to whatever thing might seem best to them. That is, of course, the Athenians. And that's the end of that little section.